Hey, sports fans, welcome to SNIQ, the inaugural edition of our trivia show where we get you test out and show off your sports knowledge. I'm Shi Davidi. I'm joined by my Sportsnet.ca colleagues, Ben Nicholson-Smith and Arden Zwelling. And guys, it's quite an interesting time in the game to be hosting this. Certainly, I think a lot of baseball fans right now could do something or could use something that's a little bit more fun than the acrimony of the back and forth between Major League Baseball and the Players Union. And we're going to try to provide it. And we're going to talk about that all throughout this program today. And gentlemen, let's start with just a quick thought from each of you. Ben, what do you think about where we're at right now?
I mean, it's really not good. You've got owners who are essentially slow playing this and going back and forth on whether it is 100% that the season will occur or not, to use the commissioner's line. And the players are, quote, disgusted. So it's a really bad combination. We'll see where it leads, but at this point, really doesn't look good.
Arden?
A quick thought. I mean, I could give you a couple hours on this. Like, I don't know. I'm exhausted, guys. Like, I'm disheartened. I mean, the whole thing has been so rancid and so typical of League of Owners that hardly seem to enjoy the game that they're meant to be stewards of. You know, to me, at this point, there's no ambiguity. There's no both sides are to blame. Like, there's none of this fallacy of billionaires versus millionaires, which was always such a misrepresentation because more than half the players earn the league minimum and will never bank $1 million in their lives. So, you know, it's a game being held hostage by a group of owners who are literally unwilling to play ball. And if we don't even get the 50-game season, guys, like if owners won't even institute that, I think we have to go to a point where we start calling it what it is, a lockout.
Yeah, absolutely, Arden. I think you're bang on there, and Ben, you as well. And it's been really a troubling time. But again, let's try to enjoy a bit of relief. We're going to bring you a different game since there isn't a game on the field. And basically how this works is, if you guys are new to the Kahoot experience, this is really a two-screen venture. You've got us on. We're going to put up the questions up on your screen. And then probably on your phone or a secondary device, you need to call up kahoot.it. And if you haven't done so yet, the game pin is below 315-6344. You enter that, the questions are going to appear on the screen with us. We're going to read them out to you. There's going to be a multiple choice, and the options get entered on your phone. Now, keep this in mind. The quicker you answer, the more points you get. All right, and we'll keep tab after each question. We'll give you a rundown how things will go. And we'll see who among this very large and growing group, which we're excited to have, is going to reign as the trivia champion. And so without further ado, let's get this game started, and we'll talk about a number of things as we go along. All right, guys, so question number 1. Which player holds the Blue Jays single season record for hits in a year? And your options there are John Olerud, Paul Molitor, Tony Fernandez, Vernon Wells. And guys, further to the point that we raised at the beginning, we think about all the things that we could be missing over the course of the season. And obviously we have 94 as a backdrop to that. But you imagine at this point in time to be arguing the way the owners and players are. It's really hard to believe that we've gotten to this point, isn't it, Ben?
Yeah, it's really hard to believe. I think it's a pandemic. We could use the entertainment. I understand the pandemic affects owners and players as well. They are certainly facing more obstacles, but man, there's part of you that says it's really too bad they can't look at this really big picture and find a way to play baseball, because we would all welcome it. And I think that a lot of eyeballs would be on the game if it could return.
3 weeks ago, we were having conversations about the damage that's been done during this, right? And now we're 3 weeks later and damage continues to be done. Like, it's so disheartening, just the short-term mindset, the short-term view that a lot of the stewards of quote unquote stewards of this game have taken, with, completely absolving any responsibility for the long-term health of this game and trying to set it up to be successful, not just this summer, but through 2021, 2022 and forward.
And we have our first answer in. Vernon Wells is the correct choice. The majority of you thinking it was John Olerud, and obviously he had a very special season in 1993 when he batted 400 into August, but he did not hold the single season record. That is Vernon Wells. Let's take a look now to our leaderboard. And first one in, La Boulette de, I hope I didn't mangle that too badly. You're on top. Strami, right on his tail. Jason, G Money, Skid. They're top 5 for now. And we're going to go to our next question. Ben?
All right, question number 2. Still lots of time to catch up for anyone not on that leaderboard. Which pitcher did Jose Bautista hit home run number 50 off of in 2010? So a little bit of trivia from about 10 years ago. And it's funny, guys, when you think about the home run leader in 2020, I mean, if we're looking at a 50-game season, the home run leader for Major League Baseball might end up with 20 home runs in the season.
If that. And, I understand the people who look at a 48-game season say there'll always be an asterisk to that. And I think given the circumstances where you think, okay, there could very reasonably be in the 70, 80-game neighborhood, sure. But I don't know. I'm not necessarily on the owner side on this specific issue, but I can see the arguments in saying, hey, let's go with a shorter season. Let's make sure that we get it done. Let's make sure that we're not going to get completely destroyed by a potential second wave of COVID-19. I think there is some degree of logic within that. But I think if you want a season that's a bit more representative, certainly you want to be looking longer.
All right. And it looks like a lot of people got this one right. So congrats to everyone who answered correctly. It was Felix Hernandez who allowed that home run number 50 off of Bautista. And let's check in on the leaderboard here to see exactly where the standings are. And Strami now is taking the lead, followed by Jason 2 and SW now in third place. Arden?
All right, question number 3. Which Blue Jays pitcher allowed the most home runs in a single season? Was it R.A. Dickey, Jerry Garvin, Joey Hamilton, or Woody Williams? Guys, I just think that the players having made the concession of expanding playoffs has not been articulated as much of a concession as it has. Like, that's a huge thing for owners, particularly when you see the deal that was reported a couple days ago with Turner Sports for broadcast rights during the postseason, in which those fees are going up through the roof. So I think the players have made a huge concession there, and I'm not sure why it's not being described as such.
Yeah, when you see owners crying poor, it just rings so hollow, right? And you see billion-dollar TV deals, you see BAMTech sold for billions of dollars a couple years ago. So when you see further concessions, like the players being willing to play an extra round of playoffs, these are all ways to bring more money into the game, and you'd hope that could generate some traction in talks.
Woody Williams gave up the most home runs in a single season. Lots of fans with a little bit of recency bias towards R.A. Dickey. So some fans still a little bit scarred from the season's past, but was actually Woody Williams, and the majority of people got it right. Let's check in at that leaderboard. I've been cheering for Arden, Shi Davidi, or what was it, Shi, Arden, Ben, but not making an appearance in the top 5 right now. Jason 2 actually has stormed into first place above Strami. Let's see if that battle continues, Shai.
Yeah, I think Shai Ben Zwelling not representing the three of us well right now. All right, question number 4. Which Blue Jays batter was hit by the most pitches in a single season? Is it Shea Hillenbrand, Charlie O'Brien, Reed Johnson, or Josh Phelps? And, Arden, just to pick up, and Ben, to pick up on the points that you guys were just making, you think about the current situation, and you can certainly argue that given the circumstances of the pandemic, maybe the owners could get a little bit of relief in some way, shape, or form. But at no point have the owners ever said, you know what, we're going to try to find a way to make everybody whole at some point down the road. Help us now, we'll pay you back in the future. This has always been just about a salary cut, salary reduction from the get-go, the threat of a salary cap. And I think when you go into a negotiation like that, you start off by leaking the idea of a 50-50 revenue split. I mean, right off the bat, you're going to ensure that the players are going to get their backup.
Well, it's not only the players. Meanwhile, draft bonuses are being deferred for years. Teams only paid $100,000 to each player that they drafted this year. The international signing period has been kicked back and pushed back, so that's a further cost savings. We've seen furloughs across the game. We've seen minor leaguers not being paid, and guys like David Price and Shin Soo Choo stepping up to pay stipends like $400 a week for minor leaguers that organizations weren't willing to pay. So money is being saved all across the board. The players are just really the only group that can actually push back against this.
Absolutely. And to our answer board here, and a lot of you thought it was my personal favorite Blue Jays dirtbag player, Reed Johnson, but it's someone who is remembered for something much different. Shea Hillenbrand, of course, in his infamous confrontation with manager John Gibbons, leading to his departure from the team. As we look to our leaderboard right now, and Ace making a significant move up the board. He's got suddenly about a one question lead on Jason, Strami, Skid, and Brando. Ben?
All right, next question, number 5. Let's get right into the minutia here, and this is a deep dive. Which of these Blue Jays players was not selected in the Rule 5 draft? So that's a fun question, but guys, as we talk about this ongoing discussion and dispute really between the players and owners, I still think that they're going to play a season. To me, the question is how long they play for, and it seems like owners are delaying. They're trying to play a shortened season because that would mean they pay the players less money. And I still think we see baseball in 2020.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. But my concern is, what is the fallout of this that's going to play out in 2021 when there's probably not going to be much normalcy in the season in terms of fans in the stands once again, and then beyond that into the next collective bargaining agreement. I think the perception around the game is that the players took it on the chin pretty badly in the last round of collective bargaining. They've wanted to pay back, and I think the owners probably felt that the union was weak and would buckle, which would explain some of their approach. But the players stood up and in a big way, and I think that's very concerning for the next round of CBA talks.
No doubt. All right, Simon Pond. A lot of correct answers here. Some very astute trivia players today. That's great to see. It was not Aquilino Lopez or Randy Wells or Jason Smith, but some real blasts from the past names there as we take a look at the updated leaderboard here. And we see that Brando is now in first place, followed by Ace and AJ Black as we turn to Arden.
A lot of movement on that leaderboard. Still waiting for Shi Zwelling to climb up there. Here's our next question. In 1989, Pat Gillick ended a near 2-year drought between trades. Who did he acquire? Jim Acker, Al Leiter, Mookie Wilson, or John Candelaria? And Ben, so you think there's going to be a season? Shi, you also do. Let's say we get that 48 to 52 game season that the players are forced into because through the March agreement, Rob Manfred can unilaterally impose that season. Is there going to be a weird sort of nihilistic thing here where players are being forced to grumble through this season and maybe having this weird soft work to rule where they aren't doing interviews and they aren't making appearances, not signing the bats, they're all unhappy and they're all seem very, displeased with the whole thing? Is that going to, taint this and make it kind of hard to watch this play out?
Yeah, I think it will. I mean, you look at this sport right now, and it doesn't seem like a partnership. Ideally, both sides would say, all right, we have competing interests in a sense, but ultimately overlapping interests. We both want to grow the game. We all want baseball to be at the front of sports discussions. We want it to be on people's phones, on people's TVs. And so I think they are partners, but in this situation, it doesn't necessarily feel like that. And so it could lead to that situation where the sides are essentially at odds with each other and really, playing hardball, so to speak, with one another.
A lot of fans who know their Trader Pat history, as Al Leiter was the individual who was acquired after a near 2-year drought between trades. Take a look at the leaderboard here. Lots more movement, but Brando staying firm atop at 52-36, although Jimmy 360 Blue Jays News hot on the heels. Shi.
All right, guys, we're going to go into defense a little bit. And this is a fan favorite for the Blue Jays. How many Gold Glove seasons, did Roberto Alomar have in Toronto? Your options are 3, 4, 5, 6. And it's funny, Ben, to hear you use the word partnership, because I've heard that in a number of different conversations in recent days, but not in terms of we have one, but in terms of we are so far. We have never been further from a partnership. And really, I've heard things that I haven't heard since '94. Uh, Even in 2002, I think there were a lot more people who were willing to try and find a way to bridge gaps. And I don't hear a lot of that stuff. And that's what really worries me about not just this year, but beyond this.
Well, and players have been preparing for this for some time. I mean, they've been skimming some money and putting it aside in a war chest to be able to, pay through a potential work stoppage. I just think most of them thought it was coming after the 2021 season. It's just come a lot sooner now. But I do think that it's been a slow burn, of the way free agency is played out, service time manipulation. I mean, Cy Young winners having their contracts renewed near the league minimum. This has been just a slow build towards now of players being very unhappy with their treatment. And I think that, 2021 and the pandemic and the way the owners responded to that was really just the straw that broke the camel's back.
Absolutely. We look to the answer here. It is 5, and this one stumped quite a number of you. A lot of you seem to have thought it was 4 seasons, but Roberto Alomar, one of the most spectacular defenders in Blue Jays history, a Gold Glover in each of his years with the Blue Jays. We look to our leaderboard. Brando holding strong. Rob Ducey, namesake of one of the great Canadians who played for the Blue Jays organization, making a strong move up there. Jimmy, G Money, Mang, all within striking distance. Ben?
All right, so we move on to question 8. This one's pretty straightforward. Who was Buck Martinez's hitting coach in 2001? Buck Martinez, of course, the Jays play-by-play announcer on Sportsnet, but a very varied past and distinguished past in lots of different facets. Jays manager at one point, who was his hitting coach. But it's funny, guys, when you think about where the game is headed, and Shi, I was just a kid in 1994. I don't really have much recollection of that, but to me this is the worst I can ever remember. At any point of me following baseball, being a baseball fan, the discussion right now, I've never seen it quite this bad.
Yeah, it's funny too. We're talking about Buck Martinez here. Buck Martinez, for those who don't know, was a very influential member of the Players Union for a long time, and he was right in the middle of talks during a bunch of labor disputes during the '80s. And he looked at this and he looked at the first offer and said, "Hey, this is clearly the owners trying to split the players, or trying to pit them against one another, something that worked for ownership in the '80s." And his thought was look, these sides, they've got to figure this out now, because, the players can fight down the road. Right now, they've got to protect and do what they can to get a season going amid this pandemic. And that's really going to be a tough road because of everything that we've just talked about.
All right, a lot of correct answers here. It was Cito Gaston, of course, best known for his time as Blue Jays manager, but he was also the hitting coach after his managing stint, after his first stint and before his second stint. So let's see that leaderboard. And we still have some familiar names up there. Rob Ducey, though, takes over first place. Brando in second. G Money in third. Arden?
And a reminder, if you want to move up that leaderboard, answer quickly. The sooner you answer, the more points you get. Who was on base when Joe Carter went deep to win the 1993 World Series? Was it Ricky Henderson and Devon White? Was it Devon White and Paul Molitor? Was it Ricky Henderson and Paul Molitor? Or was it Pat Borders and Paul Molitor? And guys, the thing I keep pushing back against, I keep seeing here, is that this is a fight between billionaires and millionaires splitting up the money. Well, the MLB players are 0 to 3 service time, which means that they are making at or near the league minimum. It means that clubs have the complete authority to unilaterally just re-up their contract of what it was the year before, or with a very small increase. We saw, Aaron Sanchez had a big dispute with the Blue Jays over that when that happened with him. And, Blake Snell, this guy won a Cy Young Award and had his contract renewed, at near the league minimum. So the vast majority of players actually are not millionaires. And I think that they're probably a lot more relatable than maybe a lot of people have been portraying.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you look at even the Blue Jays roster, right? I mean, we've heard from guys in recent months who do not have a ton of service time, whether that is and Anthony Alford speaking up, in regard to Black Lives Matter, whether that's Caleb Joseph, just as the pandemic was starting. And Shi, you wrote about him and his brother doing a landscaping business. I mean, these are relatable people in the way that I'm not sure that a lot of fans fully grasp.
Ricky Henderson and Paul Molitor were on base when Joe Carter won the World Series back in 1993, and most people knew that. 38 of you, at least. And let's see if that helped anybody climb up the leaderboard here. Rob Ducey holding strong in first place, actually increasing the lead over Brando in second place. So Strami is trying to get back into this, and we got Zeke and the Rod Bot coming in fifth place. Shi?
All right, our next question is, who is the only Blue Jays pitcher to ever win an MLB Triple Crown? ERA, wins, strikeouts. Your options are Dave Stieb, Roger Clemens, David Wells, and Roy Halladay. And, talking about or building off what you guys were just saying, this is kind of interesting because wins was once a really important stat. Of course, completely devalued in today's game and utterly unimportant. But that transition in analytics has led to a lot of efficiency in terms of the way teams operate as it relates to players and player salaries. And subsequently, that has actually meant less money for the players, even as revenues have continued to grow. The past 2 years, Major League Baseball revenues, each set a record, $10.7 billion last year. Player salaries have declined during that time. And that is also part of what's going on here right now.
Yeah, revenues are going up, and player share revenues have been going down, which is obviously what the players are upset about. The players are very upset about how free agency has played out over the last several seasons. We saw a little bit of a rebound this past offseason, but like casting ahead, guys, to what the next round of free agency might look like after teams been crying poor and after they've been trimming expenses everywhere that they can. Mookie Betts might be fine because he's one of the best players in the game. But if you're like a middle class free agent, like you have to be wondering what that's going to look like.
And we're going to go back to the question here. And Roger Clemens is the correct answer, which a vast majority of you guys remembered. He had obviously a couple tremendous years with the Blue Jays. The Blue Jays, of course, could not leverage that into a postseason appearance during either of those seasons. And we'll look to the leaderboard and see if anyone leveraged this into a move up the board. And Rob Ducey continues to extend his lead, and the rest of the leaderboard remains within striking range. Ben?
All right. And for anyone who's not on that leaderboard, you're only halfway through the questions here. You have lots of time to displace those players. And this question is, who caught Dave Stieb's 1990 no-hitter? It's a bit of a tricky one. So, Arden, to build up what you're saying there, you think about free agency, and traditionally that's been the spot where you have players getting rewarded finally for these years of riding minor league buses and these years of making pre-arb money and getting less than what they're worth through arbitration. Now you start to look ahead. It would not be a very calm time to be a free agent in this market with the uncertainty of this season, the uncertainty of next season. That's got to be a tough thing for anyone facing free agency.
Super difficult. And I would think that teams who are in relatively good shape in terms of a lack of future payroll commitments, teams like the Toronto Blue Jays will definitely have some opportunity to be a little bit more active, just because they don't have those outlays that can really muddy their financial picture.
All right. Looks like everyone dodged the Aussie Virgil bullet and picked Pat Borders. That's good to see. A lot of correct answers there. And let's check in on that leaderboard after question 11 here. Wow. Rob Ducey still at the top. We have Brando, Strami, Zeke, and Jason too, as we hand it over to Shi for question 12.
All right. Next up. Who struck out Ryan Flaherty? Who got the final out over the Orioles on September 29th, 2015, as the Blue Jays clinched the American League East? You think about free agency, you think about the future, you think about how teams right now are essentially destroying baseball rather than building it up. But at some point, this is going to be over. And the question then becomes, how much damage has been done? A lot of fans throw their hands up saying, I'm done with baseball. I'm not doing this anymore. I'm not coming back. But one of the reasons that owners continue to use these types of tactics is because fans always come back. Either of you guys think that might be different this time?
The diehards will always be there, like the people who know every minor league affiliate and who know like the Rule 5 draft question and the answers like that. Those diehards are always going to be there. But like the competition for casual fans between baseball, football, basketball, between all the major sports is going to be really interesting, especially if seasons overlap. And right now there's a lot of question about when the MLB season might play, about if the NBA is going to play. So we'll have to see how things actually shake out here in the fall. But if there is overlap, I mean, I think a lot of casual fans have been turned off in this process. I'm like, baseball, like I'm done with you. It's hard for me to sign up and to stick with you through this when it is as disheartening as it's been.
Well, this is a memory from happier times for Blue Jays fans, certainly. LaTroy Hawkins recording that final out, ending the 2-decade-long playoff drought for the Blue Jays officially in Baltimore. It was certainly a remarkable time and a day that was a lot more enjoyable than what we're experiencing now. So we go to the leaderboard. And Strami makes his move back up. Rob Ducey falling back to third. Zeke in second right now as we go to Arden with our next question.
Let's do this. Question number 13. Who led Blue Jays starters in strikeouts with 131 during the 2015 season? And if there is like one positive to be found here or one offshoot, at least from where I stand, it's that players are being a bit more outspoken now as this process has gone on. Things have really kind of shifted from when Blake Snell came out and talked, early in this process, cut a lot of flack and a lot of heat, and a lot of people didn't like what he said. I was probably the only person who actually supported him. And then now we are seeing Trevor Bauer and Jack Flaherty and Max Scherzer and all kinds of players, Randall Grichuk, coming out really strongly and actually expressing their views. I think that's a good thing. I think players need to be talking to fans and relating to them and telling them what it's like to be a ball player and why they are fighting for these rights right now. I love to see it.
It's a great thing, and I think it's a lot more relatable than what you see from owners, where you hear Bill DeWitt of the Cardinals or Ken Kendrick of the Diamondbacks essentially saying, hey, we need a salary cap, we're not profitable. And you hear the players and they're like, look, this doesn't make sense to us, and they're explaining why, and they're doing it in really understandable ways. That helps the players become relatable, and it helps put pressure on the owners in a real way.
Yeah, I've never liked the PR strategy of not having players come out and talk. Like, I think they should be on YouTube shows, like Trevor Bauer on the Pat McAfee show was terrific. They should be on Twitter. They should be having their own streams. They should be having their own YouTube channels where they're putting out their own thoughts and relating to young fans, hopefully bringing some more young fans onto their side. So who led Blue Jays starters and strikeouts during 2015? Marco Estrada did with 131, and an impressive amount of people had the correct answer to that one. Let's see if anybody atop leaderboard answered it quickly and was able to move around. Strami in first place. Rob Ducey has really fallen off here. And Zeke, hopefully that's Ezekiel Carrera, has moved into to second place. I believe, Ben, I'm throwing to you now.
Man, if Ezekiel Carrera is playing this game, I'm very happy about this already. Question 14. Roy Halladay generated more career WAR than any any first-round draft pick in Blue Jays history. Who ranks second? And guys, another focus in the last week or so has been the draft, and not to pull us too far away from our previous discussion, but Austin Martin, I mean, this looks like a best-case scenario for the Toronto Blue Jays and what they could have gotten in that pick.
Yeah, I mean, very, very publicly, they were talking about how ecstatic they were, but I had a few private conversations with people in the organization too, and they were kind of shocked. They were like, this could not have worked out better for us. And time will ultimately tell, but they've got yet another potential impact young player to plug into a roster, somebody who could potentially time with their core. And I think they're pretty excited about the three arms that they got later in the draft, especially CJ Van Eyck, the second round pick, a right-hander who could progress through the system relatively quickly. We've talked a lot about how they needed pitching, and he could be a pitcher who is up here sooner rather than later.
All right, and a lot of correct answers here for Sean Green, 48 if you got that one right. But a lot of good names to choose from there, of course, in the Jays' history. Maybe Austin Martin will eventually join them, but let's take a look at the leaderboard right now and see if Strami is still up there. And Strami indeed is there, followed by Zeke and Chris. So I'll throw it to Shi for the next question.
All right. And this is a question, something that wouldn't happen in today's game anymore. Which speedster stole 101 bases in less than 2 full seasons with the Blue Jays? And, you think about tools that you don't see a lot in the game anymore. And we're moving a little bit away from the labor stuff right now. But I think in the draft, there aren't a lot of guys who can get a lot of speed. Last year's draft, the Blue Jays managed to get Desan Brown, a Canadian outfielder who had essentially an 80 speed rating, one of the fastest guys in the draft. Maybe, if we get some more equilibrium into the game, we'll start seeing guys playing that traditional style of baseball, even though modern analytics completely hates it.
Well, it does relate to labor, Shy, because the teams aren't paying for stolen bases anymore. You look at Billy Hamilton, who's the most prolific base stealer of the last, however many years, stole more bases than anybody, gets non-tendered, doesn't even get a contract offer. So, if look, the player's going to do what they're being paid for. And right now, MLB pays for OPS. That's why I see a lot of strikeouts, a lot of walks, a lot of home runs. If they started paying for stolen bases, I bet you a lot of guys would start stealing bases.
All right, and our correct answer here is Otis Nixon. The majority of you thinking it was Ricky Henderson. Unfortunately, his stay with the Blue Jays was much shorter than 2 seasons. It was more like a couple months. Of course, he did help them win a World Series, so it turned out well. And we'll check our leaderboard now. Strami continuing to maintain his lead, expanding it a bit. Zeke, Chris, Rob Ducey in fourth, Jason in fifth, hanging tough. Arden?
Real story here is Rob Ducey blowing this lead. Who was the starting pitcher for the Blue Jays on September 25th, 2003, the day Carlos Delgado hit 4 home runs? Was it Josh Towers? Was it Roy Halladay? Was it Kelvin Escobar? Or was it Pete Walker? When we talk about Austin Martin, the thing is he's not actually a Blue Jay yet. He hasn't signed a professional contract. I personally have no doubts that he will sign with the Blue Jays. There's so many incentives on both sides for these to get this deal done. And for the Blue Jays, we've been talking about what a unique opportunity it is that he even fell to them. For them not to sign him right now would be such a major disappointment. Do either of you guys have any doubt at all that Austin Martin will sign with the Blue Jays?
I don't have any doubt. I think he will. Ultimately, if he were to go back into the draft, then maybe he boosts his draft position slightly, gets a slightly bigger bonus. But there's risk with that, and I don't think it makes sense for him to take that. And if you're the Jays, you can go over slot a little bit for him, pare down the bonuses of the other guys a little, and make the numbers add up.
Yeah, the upside for Austin Martin just isn't huge in going back into the draft, especially not knowing what college baseball is going to look like over the next 12 months and not knowing what next June's draft is going to look like if it even takes place. So who was the starting pitcher? It was Pete Walker. Currently, the Blue Jays pitching coach, has been their pitching coach for a number of years, and congratulations to a lot of you who knew that little slice of Blue Jays history. Very impressive, the amount of people who got that. Let's see if it's impacted the top of the leaderboard. Strami holding strong, Rob Ducey just falling out of contention, Zeke, Jason, and Chris hot on the heels of Strami in first place. What's next, Ben?
Man, I will say I'm impressed by the number of correct answers here. A lot of people definitely know their Blue Jays history. Let's try out another one here. We're going back again to that 2010 season when Jose Bautista broke out with 54 home runs. Question is, who finished second in that season? So some good choices to choose from there. But going back to the idea of fans and how they relate to the game in a season like this, I think that it is such a shame when you look at it, because the actual players on the field, right? Like today's names, not Cano and Konerko and Cabrera, but today's version, Aaron Judge and Francisco Lindor, they're such compelling players. So it really would be a shame if fans walked away from a game at a time that has such compelling young stars.
That might be baseball's saving grace, because you think back to the damage after the strike in '94. It really took that steroid-fueled summer of love between Mark McGwire and Sammy Sosa, and obviously we look at it a little bit differently right now, but that summer really rekindled baseball. And you mentioned a couple guys right there. You think about Mike Trout and Ronald Acuna Jr. and Juan Soto and Bo Bichette and Vladimir Guerrero Jr. There's just so much good young talent right now. these guys might be so much fun to watch that even baseball fans turned off come back to it. And that might be the saving grace for the owners right here. The players are so compelling right now. The product is so good that they can really literally shoot themselves in the face, but still come back from it.
Yeah. And I mean, the damage has been done to an extent, but let's not forget, it's not like they've canceled the World Series yet. So I still think there's room for a rebound. I really do. Let's take a look at the leaderboard. You saw the picture there of Paul Konerko. He finished that season with a whole lot of home runs, 39 if I remember right. And we have Zeke now at the top of the leaderboard, followed by Stromy, Jason, Chris, and Bert. So now it is Shai's turn to ask a question.
All right, we're getting into crunch time here. Crucial. Danny Ainge and Mark Hendrickson are well known as two sports stars. Which Blue Jays player was drafted in the NFL and NBA? And this is an interesting question too, because you think about some of the decisions that athletes of the future are going to have to make. The two sports stars in high schools and merging into college right now and trying to pick a pathway. There's been so much damage to baseball in a number of different ways. I wonder if some guys might look at the stability. You think of Kyler Murray, look at the stability in other leagues, the opportunity in other leagues, and say, do I really want to grind through years of minors in the baseball for a shot at this 6 years of salary manipulation before I get to free agency? I wonder what the athletes of the future, how this is going to impact them down the road.
But guys, it wasn't that long ago that we were debating the Kyler Murray decision as if both options were totally, great options for him. Right now, he's the starting quarterback for the Arizona Cardinals, and baseball's not being played. And if he had gone the baseball route, I mean, who knows if he would have made the majors yet? He might not even be getting his minor league stipend right now. So his option was obvious in hindsight. And I think you're right. I think for a lot of players going forward, they're going to look at a shortened draft. They're going to look at undrafted players only signing for $20,000. They're going to say, yeah, I think that some of these other sports look a lot more, profitable to me.
Dave Winfield is the correct answer, and he, as a Hall of Famer, clearly made the correct decision to pursue a career in baseball. A lot of you got this one right, 47. And as we get really down into the nitty-gritty here, let's see if it impacted our leaders. Zeke holding strong, about a one-question lead on Stromy. Jason right there in the mix. Bert and Marty need a little bit of help to make their move. Ben?
All right, now I believe this is our final, we are on our second to last question here. So when the Blue Jays reinstated Scott Richmond to the 40-man roster on June 21st, 2010, so just about 10 years ago this weekend, who did they designate for assignment? Some familiar names there for Blue Jays fans, and it's pretty crazy when you think about it once you see what the answer is. But yeah, it's really crunch time for these players and owners. When do you guys think the timeline is for next steps? When will we know? Will there be a season, and how long will that season be?
Well, if you sort of read the tea leaves or read between the lines of Manfred's comments yesterday, there was an invitation there back to the negotiating table. And it almost seemed that he was also conceding the point on prorated salaries too. Now, the question becomes, can they get to a number where the players say, okay, we're not going to grieve this, we're going to get to a middle ground. So I think that both sides right now are deciding on their next steps, and they probably have a pretty good idea of where the middle ground is. Someone's got to make the move to get there.
A lot of correct answers here. That's great to see. A few of you guessed Kevin Millar, but it was Edwin Encarnacion. And with one question to go, let's see how the leaders are stacking up here. Zeke is holding on to top spot. We have Jason on the rise, Stromy, Bert, and Terminator, as Arden will take us to the finish line here.
It's going to be hard to unseek Zeke here, but let's see if we can do it. Rob Ducey, by the way, out of the conversation, totally off the leaderboard. What a fall from grace for Rob Ducey. Which future manager did not play for the Blue Jays in the early 2000s? Was it Dave Martinez, Kevin Cash, Chris Woodward or Brad Ausmus. When we think about managers, like we think about kind of the forward-facing role of the field staff and of the team, somebody who talks to the press every day, has a lot of interactions, speaks for the team, somebody who has a bit of a personality. Like we've gotten to know, John Gibbons in this market as a player and a manager with a great personality. That's kind of the shame of all this, is that there's a lot of players in MLB who are super marketable and who have great personalities and who are fun and hilarious. And the three of us get to interact with them on a near daily basis. But, I don't know that a lot of fans get to see those personalities because MLB has done such a poor job of marketing them. But you can watch the, Trevor Bauer's Momentum channel, the live ABs that they have been putting on YouTube throughout this pandemic and this work stoppage. Just watch, Trevor Bauer going with Jose Ramirez in live ABs in a desert in Arizona, or Frankie Montes throwing to Jose Ramirez. It's hilarious, and there are great players to be marketed here, and I think that fans just aren't getting to see them.
Yeah, it's too bad that there's a lot of personality there, and maybe this is a chance for broadcasters to be creative, because it's going to be a season without fans in the stands for the most part, so it will require some creativity.
Brad Ausmus was the future manager that did not play for the Blue Jays in the early 2000s. Let's go to the leaderboard and see who our champion is. Here is the podium. In third place is Bert, who got 16 out of 20. In second place, Jason, 17 out of 20. And in first place, I bet you it's going to be Zeke. It's Zeke. Ezekiel Carrera wins the debut edition of SNIQ. Shai, you have to be happy to see that.
Congratulations to Zeke. And I really do wish this was Ezekiel Carrera, because that would be great. But, I also hope that Rob Ducey is filling up your timeline, Arden, with a lot of messages on Twitter right now for trash talking him so well. But this was a lot of fun. And, you think about the different memories that baseball leaves you, and baseball is really a generational sport, right? That you pass it down, you share it, you talk about it in ways that maybe you don't quite necessarily do with the other sports. It's got this long-standing tradition. There's a hominess to it. There's a reason why it's in the American psyche the way that it is. And I mean, the self-flagellation has been really tough to watch, and I'm not clear what the end game for the owners what the end game for the owners is in the here and now. I think we'll soon find out. I wonder if this is maybe spun beyond the control of a few people, but I think that there is an opportunity for the moderates to build some bridges right now, because there's clearly a middle ground between the two sides, and it would be nice to see them rein in the hawks a little bit and say, look, we need to stop fighting about pennies and start working towards making big dollars in the future.
It's like I was saying earlier, guys, it's been such short-term, nearsighted thinking, throughout this. It's been such a pattern of it with just and look, in the year 2020, with a pandemic and a November election that could be crazy, we're all thinking short-term, nobody's really taking the long view on anything in life. But I think that the owners can look at getting expanded playoffs and getting as much of a break on salaries as they have to this point, to see that they've acquired things in this negotiation, if we can even really call it that, that can be very, very valuable in the long run. And, if anybody still wants to watch, your game after you've spent, months beating the life out of it, I think you need to be very thankful for that. You need to start planning for the future and looking further ahead than just July and August.
And I think if we do zoom out really big picture here and we say, okay, in 2030, when we're talking about the game, what are we going to remember? Well, if it was a month and a half of bickering between players and owners, the three of us will remember that. And probably the people playing trivia will remember that, because we're all big baseball fans, but the casual fan might forget. However, if Major League Baseball does not have a season in 2020, that will be a stain that everyone will remember. And it might actually make baseball less relevant 10 years from now. So I think there's a chance to recover, as bad as things are, but they're going to have a lot of work to do and a lot of bridges to kind of cross in the next week or 10 days.
Yeah, that's a great point right there. And so back from the backroom games to our game here, and guys, leaderboard 18 out of 20, 17 out of 20, 16 out of 20. Did we make our questions too easy?
I got to give some credit to the game players here. That we tried to make those questions hard. I was trying to stump people.
Yeah, I thought we'd have some more enough obscure questions that maybe our leader would be like 14, 15 range. Arden, I don't know. I think we should go back to the drawing board a little bit for next
Yeah, it's a true challenge of our intellect that we need to go back to the drawing board and come up with some harder questions. Yeah, I thought some of them were pretty hard. I thought some of them were a little tricky, but hey, man, look, if there's one thing about like diehard baseball fans, it's that they know the particulars, they know the minutia, and they know the details. So maybe we shouldn't be surprised.
Well, that's we'll leave it at that, and we'll go back to the drawing board a little bit, and we'll see what we'll come at you guys with next time. But I'd like to thank everybody for joining us, for playing along with the inaugural edition of SNIQ, where we test your knowledge, and you guys obviously showed us you guys know your stuff. We'll come back at you better next time. Have a great day, everybody.